Hare Krishna Mataji. Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna all devotees. So I'll just share the screen. Just a minute. Yeah. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the topic that we are going to discuss today is like, does God exist? Like, how can we convince someone that God exists? This is actually quite controversial topic because this has been discussed by many people and each people have given their own ideologies. Okay. So the first question that keeps running in everyone's mind or scientists like for the past 5 or 6 centuries is that how was the universe originated? So how was the universe created? So how are we going to look into this presentation is we will try to convince that God is present or God is existing by using like scientifically using scientific theories. How can we say that God exists? And based on the nature's law or universal laws, so how can we give our point of view that God really exists? And based on the scripture, so scripturally, how can we say God does exist? So these are the three things that we'll be touching around. So as I said, the one question that runs in the human mind for the past 5 or 6 centuries is that how was the universe created or how was it originated? So in science in the past, there has been many theories that have stated what how the universe was originated. Out of those, one was steady state theory that stated like universe never had a beginning or it never had an end. So new matters are always constantly created and it replaces the old existing matter, and that's how the universe is running. Eventually, this theory was disproved, I guess, in 1940s or 50s, and then they brought back another theory that is oscillating theory, and eventually that was also disproved. And after that, they created a theory that has been widely accepted by most of the scientists in the world. So, as per the theory, what they say is like the whole universe was just created out of a chance. So it means the universe was just created from nothing and nowhere. So initially there was nothing, and suddenly out of nowhere, the whole universe, what we see today, was created. Oh, sorry, uh, is the screen visible? I'm sorry. Hello.
Uh, I
Uh,
can't see
no,
because
it's gone, Prabhuji.
yeah.
I'm so sorry. The problem is when I share the screen, I couldn't see any participants, so it's like I'm speaking to a computer. Just a minute. Yeah. Is it visible now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So they say like the whole universe, there was nothing before, and just suddenly, due to an explosion, the whole universe was created. So what was that explosion? So that was called Big Bang theory, which was accepted widely by most of the scientists. So as per Big Bang theory, the entire universe at same time was created before 14 billion years ago. So what they say is there was a concept of singularity. What singularity is that singularity is something that has infinite mass and infinite temperature. So they said due to some unknown reasons, which they couldn't even figure out, due to some unknown reasons, the singularity exploded, and due to the explosion, there was an expansion in the universe. And as a result of expansion and cooling down, the whole universe was created with all the galaxies and solar systems and planets that we see today. So as I said before, they say like there was nothing before. So what raises question regarding the Big Bang theory is Big Bang theory, they have not given a definite answer to the source of the origin. So here they say that the singularity was the reason through which the universe was created. But they never proved or they never found any solution to say from where did the singularity come from. So how was it existed? If it is existing, there should be a source for it which is material. So they couldn't figure out how was the singularity sourced from. So what can we understand from this is, let us take a general example. So if there is any explosion that's happening or if there's any blast that's happening near us, Have any one of us, have we seen anything constructive being created out of it? Has anyone of us seen it? Any constructive created out of a blast or something? No, because like no explosion can create anything constructive. It can only create something destructive, or it can only create a disorder. So, for example, let us take a bomb explosion. If it's suppose happening at any place in the world, so if there's a bomb explosion, it can create only disorder. It cannot create anything constructive, or it cannot create anything perfect. It can only destroy what is existing. And even if I go and tell my friend or someone that there was a bomb blast near my place, what will be the first question he asks? He will ask like, who planted that bomb and how did it explode? And if I say to him like, nah, it just exploded by itself. There was no one who planted the bomb. Do you think he or me or will anyone of us believe? So we all believe that there was someone who planted the bomb, and as a result of that, it exploded. So when they say like the singularity exploded, we have to ask the question like how who kept that singularity, or how was that singularity formed? So this is something that could not be answered by the Big Bang theory. Let us, in this regard, let us look into the example of Isaac Newton. In 15th or 16th century, Isaac Newton was actually a believer of God. So when he and his atheistic friend, when they were having a discussion like how was the universe created, Isaac Newton was proposing like there should be an intelligent mind or a superior being who controlled all this for the creation. His atheistic friend told that like nah, the universe was just created by itself. There was no God or something who created it. Isaac Newton tried convincing him, but no use. The atheistic friend never believed him. So what Isaac Newton did is he actually created a small scale globe in his own laboratory, and he just kept it on his table. So when his friend came the next day morning, he saw the globe that was placed on the table, and he asked like, "Hey, who gave this globe to you, and who created it?" He said, "No one gave it to me, and no one created it. It just was created by itself automatically." But it was not here yesterday. That's what I'm saying. Overnight, it just created by itself. Though the atheistic friend never believed it. What he said is, how can something be created by itself? There should be someone who created it. So what Isaac Newton said is, if you can't believe that such a small scale object cannot be created by itself, so how do you expect me to believe that such a vast universe was just created just by chance and not by any supreme creator? So when we say about the creation, we also have to look into the intelligence behind the creation. So if we say, like as the scientists say, if anything happens by accident, so it cannot create anything that is in order, that too for a long time. So even if suppose something is created in order, over a span of time, it would just be in a disorder. For example, let us look into our universe. So it has been segregated into various galaxies. Each galaxy has multiple solar system, and each solar system has multiple planets. So we can see how perfectly these are all ordered. So we cannot just say like just by accident, the whole universe along with all these various creations were just kept floating there without any order. If there was no one who was overlooking this process, it would have gone in disorder. There was no reason for all the galaxies to stay as it is, and for all the planets to stay how it is right now. And also, if we look into our Earth, what we can see is there has been a proper arrangement for light, food, water, etc. These are all the basic necessities that life needs to survive on this planet. So we all need light, we all need food, and we all need water to survive. So these are all perfectly placed in our planet so that we could live with it. So how can we say like just by chance all these arrangements were made and this has been existing for billions of years? What can we infer from this? That if there is a creation, there should be a creator. So without creator, there cannot be a creation. So again, let us look into the example of Earth. We all know like the shape of the Earth, or for any planet in that matter, the shape of the Earth is like perfectly spherical. So no explosion like just by chance can create anything so perfect in shape. And we also know that the speed of the Earth is constant, not just now. From the time of the creation, the speed of the Earth is always 60,000 miles around the sun. So it's not like it is 67,000 today and it is 68,000 today. It's always constant. Similarly, the rotation of the Earth, it's always anti-clockwise. It always moves from left to right. At no point of time have we seen the Earth moving in the opposite direction. Next, let us look into the hydrological cycle of in our planet. So hydrological cycle, how systematically it has been designed is that from the water from the ocean, during the evaporation, it leaves the salt behind. Just the water evaporates and it goes into the cloud. As a result of condensation, what happens is the clouds moves around the globe and then it distributes the fresh water around the earth for various purposes such as vegetation and living. This also, from the time it has been created, we can see like this cycle has been so constant and it has been perfectly designed that it never changes the procedure. It always follows a particular procedure. So the next question that comes is, where does life come from? So we all believe that life comes from life, but there were some scientists who claimed that life can be created from chemicals. For example, there were two scientists, Urey and Miller. They were in 1950s. What they claimed is that life can be created from chemicals. So what they actually meant was that the chemicals that was the basic block material for amino acid which makes the life was created just by chance. So what theory they proposed is that Earth has abundance of carbon dioxide, oxygen, hydrogen, and then other abundance materials. And due to the support of lightning energy, these all chemicals mixed with each other, and then they form the basic block for amino acid. And as a result of which, life evolved from chemical. So to prove this theory, what they actually did is in the laboratory, they actually mixed the chemicals and using the lightning spark, they created a basic precursor for the amino acid. So we have to note they did not create the amino acid. Amino acid actually makes the life, basic blocks of life, but they just made the chemicals that can create the amino acid. So they never created the amino acid. And what can we see from this is no scientist, like even if they claim that it all happened by chance. So this experiment, what we can see is that scientists, they mixed all the chemical, the right amount of chemical at the right time. They supervised the whole experiment and then they introduced or injected the electrical spark at the right time. And as a result of which they formed the chemical. So it did not happen automatically. Even in the laboratory, there was scientists who was overlooking this process, but they say like whole chemicals were just created as it is and then life created from it without any supervision. So one more theory what they suggest is, suppose I come from my father and mother, my father and mother are made up of matter, so we can say life comes from matter. So how can we give a proper reply is that, okay, yeah, I came from my father and mother, but who are my father and mother? They are living being. So what is living being? What can we say the difference between living being and non-living being is that a living being has consciousness in it, whereas a non-living being does not have a conscious in it. So my father and mother, they have a conscious in it, consciousness in them. So when I come from them, I'm coming from a life which has consciousness. Suppose if there are two people who are dead, so do we think that they can provide any life, or can any child or life come out of them? No, because they have the same matter in them when they were alive. They have the same body, they have the same parts, but they cannot produce any children. It's because they do not have the consciousness in them. So from this, what can we infer is that life can only be created from another life. So recently, even before, like I think 5 or 6 years before, there was a scientist who said he created a actually life from chemical. So actually, when we looked into that, what we saw is he did not create a life from the scratch. Later, he also accepted it. What he actually did is he removed a DNA from a bacteria. He synthesized it. It means he has some two external things. He created artificial DNA, synthesized DNA, and he injected the synthesized DNA into the existing bacteria. As a result of which, the synthesized DNA started reproducing. So this is nothing but removing a DNA. This is nothing but a DNA transplant, to be in a simple term. He did not create anything from scratch. So till now, there has not been any life which has been created just from chemicals. So there were also some scientists in the past who believed in the God, such as Isaac Newton, and then Kelvin, who introduced the theory of thermodynamics, and Albert Einstein. They all believed there was some supreme power who was the reason for all the creation and the maintenance. So now scientifically we looked how the universe was originated. Now let us look into the universal laws. So before going into the universal laws, let us first look into the day-to-day laws that we face commonly. So first is the traffic laws. So we all drive car or bike in that matter. So if we are stepping out and if we are driving a car, there are some traffic laws. Suppose if we look into this country, there are some traffic laws that has been implemented by the NZTA. So if we are driving a car, we have to follow those rules. For one of the rules is, for example, we have to follow the traffic signal. So there are some specific laws. If it is red, we cannot drive the vehicle past the signal. If it is green, then we have to drive. So it means these all laws are all there, and it has been created by someone in power, that is NCTA. So it is like we have to follow the laws. It's not like, nah, when it is green I'll stop, and when it is in red I'll act on my wish. No, we cannot do that, because these laws has been existing and we have to follow it. Similarly, there are some government laws. So if we are in New Zealand, each country would have different government laws, and if we are in New Zealand, it is compulsory for us to follow the rules that has been set by the government. If suppose a person says, no, I am not going to follow the rules, and if someone is acting opposite to it, he will surely be made to follow them by any means. He might be put in prison or he might be punished or something, but he will eventually be made to follow. Here also, these laws were created by the people who are in power, such as lawyers, judge, and political parties, politicians, namely for any people. And then they all created this law. So similar to this, what we deal with daily on daily basis are company laws. So whoever works in whatever company, they have to adhere to the laws that has been set by the company. So any employee cannot work on his own wish, and he cannot take his own roles and responsibility. He has to act on the interest of the company. And who made those company law? They were made by the management or the board of directors. So similar to this, universal laws. So for example, if you look into the physical law of optics, so what it states is that the angle of incidence in a reflective or a refractive surface will always be equal to the angle of refraction or angle of reflection. So this law, it's always been followed from the time of creation. So it's not like it is continuously changing. Similarly, there's a law of gravity. So we all know what law of gravity is. For example, if we throw a ball, the ball would definitely come down because of the gravitational pull acting by the earth to pull the object down. So law of gravity is also constant throughout the creation. Similar to this, there's a law of nature also. Suppose if a baby is taking a birth, once it takes birth, it immediately starts to cry. So how does the baby know that it needs to cry, or how does it know how to smile? So from where is it getting all this information, and how is it processed? And if we look into this body, with whom we are actually we are identifying ourselves daily, this body is also subjected to law. It is subject to the law of birth and death. So any person who is taking a birth, irrespective of who is he, any person if he is taking a birth, he needs to die. That is the law of nature. So from the general laws that we looked, and from the universal law that we saw so that we saw here. So there is one thing that is common, is that these laws work perfect and they never change. So, for example, if you look into the universal law of optics or the gravity, those are all constant. They never change. So, what we can say is these laws are organized in this, or like functioning in an organized way. So, what would have happened if there is no one to look after them, and if just by chance, what is the probability of it working so perfectly? So, why could not it have been a random one? Suppose if there is no one to look at it, why should the gravity work as it is? Suppose if I'm throwing a ball, so why should the law state that the ball needs to come down? So how is it perfectly designed? So if there is no one to look at, and if there's everything happening by the accident, there might be at any time the laws might change. It can keep changing daily. So day by day it can keep changing. So one day I might throw the ball and it can never come down because it has not been controlled or supervised by anyone. It can keep changing. So this also states like if there are laws, there needs to be a lawmaker who is implementing these laws and who is maintaining the universe with those laws. So first what we saw is if there is a creation, there should be a creator behind it. And if there is a law to maintain the universe, there should be a lawmaker such as materially, if we can say government, NCTA, those are all who make the local laws. Similarly, for the universe to prevail and for the universe to work accordingly, there should be a lawmaker who has made all these laws. So till now we have seen like how God acts as the creator and how God supervises for the laws. So now we have to understand like how to understand God and like who is really God. So before that we have to know like is God subjective or is God objective? So there are two different truths. Some people say that God is a subjective truth, and some people say that God is an objective truth. So we have to know what is a subjective truth and what is an objective truth. Subjective truth is something that is result of the perception of the individual mind, or we can say it is due to the imagination. So I might have a subjective truth, the other person might have a subjective truth, the third person might have a subjective truth. So these might not be the same, but each person, due to his own perception and thinking, they might have some truth. Whereas objective truth is something that is independent of the existence, and it does not depend on the perception of the individuals. So even if the individual perception are differing, the objective truth stays as it is, and it doesn't get affected by the individual perception. So let us look into some examples. So what are all the subjective truth? Suppose I might like a book. For example, I might like the book Da Vinci Code. So the other person, he might not like the book Da Vinci Code. So he might like the book Angels and Demons. So if there is no rule that if I am liking a book, the other person also needs to like a book. So when we compare now, how can we prove that Da Vinci Code is better than Angels and Demons? It is only based on perception. Similarly, what we can say is I like a particular color. So I'm saying I like black. So the other person is saying I like pink. So it doesn't mean that black is the best color or the pink is the best color. It all runs in our perception, and this is called subjective truth, and it differs. Whereas objective truth is something that does not differ. For example, we are saying that Earth is spherical. So even if I, and as an individual, if I perceive in my mind that Earth is actually flat and it is not individual, it is not spherical, it is not going to affect the shape of the earth being spherical. Irrespective of what I think, the earth is always going to remain spherical. What we have to understand is that God is an objective truth and not a subjective truth. It means God is not present only because some people claims that he is actually present. God is irrelevant to those perceptions and he is not affected by those perceptions. God is an objective truth and he exists as it is. So when we actually speak to about God to any common person or scientist, the first question that they ask is, "Show me God to believe him." What do they say? Show me God face to face so that I can believe him that he exists. Then we can ask the question, okay, so if I show you the God, will you start practicing devotional service? Then you say, no, 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 I will not do that. What I'll do is I'll exist. God is there. I will accept God is there. That's it. So let God exist. Then I will also be existing. That's it. I will not surrender to him. I'll just believe. So for him to believe, you have to actually bring the God and show him face to face. From this, what we can understand is most of the people, they are considering only seeing to be the proof of existence. So, but is seeing the only belief? Generally, are we believing everything only by seeing? For example, let us look into the situation. Suppose if I am driving from Papagura to Albany, I need to cross the Harbor Bridge. So while going before Harbor Bridge, I'm listening to the radio, and the radio states that there's a huge traffic in the Harbor Bridge due to a crash, and the lanes are all blocked, and the persons are advised to take the alternate route and then to reach Albany. So in that case, will I demand like, no, I have to see the traffic with my own eyes, then only I'll believe and I'll take decision? Are we behaving like that? No, we are actually listening to the radio and then we are believing it and we are taking another route. Another example, what we can say is death. We all know death is certain. Death is also an objective truth. But have you ever said like, no, I won't believe in death because I have not seen death. I have not seen my own death. So I will not believe that I will die. Based on the universe and based on the other people, we know like whoever is born will be dead. Even Srila Prabhupada in the text purport of Upadeshamrita, he states like there are two types of intelligence, like there are two types to receive the knowledge. One is through hearing and one is through seeing. What he states is that intelligent people accept the knowledge through hearing and the less intelligent people accepts it only by seeing. So that's third category. Even after seeing, they will not believe. So we'll not speak about them. So the less intelligent people will only believe after seeing something. So before we saw like the people only after listening to the radio or inferring that death is certain, they believe that death exists and they believe that traffic exists. But in case of God, why this double standard? Why are they actually wanting to see God to believe something? Okay, suppose let us look into an example. So we all believe that atom exists, right? So we are not saying like atom is subjective to some scientist mind. We all know that atom is objective because atom makes up all the matter and we are looking matter around us and we say atom is objective. So let us take a person who doesn't have a educational background. He just goes to a scientist and he says like, prove me that atom exists. So the scientist is saying like atom is very small and it's very tiny. It's even hard to look through electronic microscope. So he said, no, no, I want to see the atom to believe that really atom exists. So what the scientist does is using mathematical calculations and equations, he makes a lot of calculations and then he infers that atom actually exists and he gives the paper to the other person. So do you think that person would be able to read all this and understand that atom actually exists? Will he be able to inference all the data? He won't even know how to hold the paper because he's not trained and he doesn't have knowledge to understand the data interference. So similarly, even if we go to some pure devotee and if we ask like, show me God face to face, even if the pure devotee has the power to actually bring God face to face, do we think we can actually see God face to face? Can we actually infer the data of the God, or can we actually understand him by seeing? Because we are not trained and we are not qualified to actually see God face to face. So what are all the ways to understand God? So basically there are two ways. One is the ascending process and the other one is the descending process. So what ascending process is that? Trying to understand or believe something, in this case God, using my own strength, such as like own strength in the sense our own senses. And basically this ascending process is not recommended anywhere. It's not good to just understand something based on our own strength. There is something called descending process. It is where we receive the pure knowledge from the proper source. For example, if I want to know about the microbacteria and other biology things, I need to go to a microbiologist who is expert in that field. I cannot just go to a chemist or a physicist and ask him like, prove me that bacteria exists. He cannot guide because it is out of his subject knowledge. So if we want to receive the proper knowledge, we have to actually receive it from the proper source. And this is the recommended process to understand God. So why ascending process is not recommended is it is depending on the gathering information using our 10 senses. So basically, we all know what are our 10 senses. We have 5 karmendriyas and 5 jnanendriyas, that is working senses and action senses. And trying to understand God through these senses are not recommended because these senses are completely imperfect. Like our senses are not perfect and our mind is subjected to illusion. So how can we say like our senses are imperfect? Okay, let us look into our eyes and ears. Even in this material universe, if we want to look into a particular light, we can only spot the light if it is between a particular wavelength to a particular wavelength. If the light is less or more than the particular wavelength, then we cannot see that light. In the case of hearing, the sound can be heard only if it is between 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. If the sound is below 20 hertz, then we cannot hear them. If it is more than 20 kilohertz, then also we cannot hear them. And our mind is always subjected to illusion. The great example is we can see mirage. So when we drive in a hot sunny day, far away we can see like the road is there is a water on the road. There would be a wavy water like feel on the road, but when we go near to it, we will actually see that there is no water on the road. It is due to my mind and eyes illusion that I can see the water. If these material objects, just light and sound I'm speaking about, if these material objects are limited and we can only see them or hear them within a particular frequency, so how can we expect to see the God who is completely spiritual? So he's not even material, he's completely spiritual. So how can we see him just through our imperfect senses? So what should we actually do is we actually have to follow the descending process. So we have to submissively hear from the bona fide sources because they are authorized to teach those, they are authorized to make us understand who is God and how God exists. When we submissively hear from the authorized sources, God will automatically reveal himself by his mercy. There is no need for us to use our own strength to understand God. God will automatically reveal himself once we are submissively and we are sincerely following the devotional process. So this descending process has been recommended by Lord Sri Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita 4.2. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu. So what he says is this supreme science it was received through the disciplic succession. So he's not saying like it was just randomly distributed to all the people. There was a disciplic succession, like how I said, like if you need to understand biology, you need to go to a microbiologist. Similarly, if you need to understand who is God, you have to follow the disciplic succession. They can guide you, and through their mercy and through the mercy of the God, you can actually see the God. So now let us look into some of the scriptural evidence to state like the God exists. So first one is from Bhagavad Gita 10.8. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattas sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. So what Lord Krishna says is, I am the origin of all the creation. Everything proceeds from me. So here he states like he is the origin of all creation, and we can infer that the universe was not created just by chance and it has a creator. And Krishna states like he is the origin. So it means God is actually the origin of the universe. Next one, Bhagavad Gita 9.5. Nacha mattani bhutani pashya me yogamaishwaram bhuta brinna cha bhutasto mamatma bhuta bhavanaha. So here what he says is, although I am the maintainer of all the living entities and although I am everywhere. So here he states he is the maintainer of all the living entities on the universe. So what can we understand is like he is maintaining the universe using the laws. So from the first verse we understood like he is the creator or the origin, and second from this verse we can understand like he is the maintainer of the universe and he creates all the laws. Now third one, Bhagavad Gita 7.6. Etadhyonini bhutani sarva nityupadharaya aham kritsnasya jagatah prabhavah pralayastata. So here he is saying no for certain that I am the origin and I am the dissolution. So here he states like I am the reason for the universe to end. So first verse states he is the creator. Second verse states 9.5 it states like he is the maintainer. And the third verse states like he is the destroyer. So he creates, he maintains, and he destroys. So nothing is happening by chance. And the creation, maintenance, and destruction, it is happening only by God. Okay, apart from Sri Krishna, let us see like what Brahma has said. So we all know Brahma is the authentic source because one of the parampara actually comes from Brahma. So whatever Brahma says, it is a bona fide source and we can follow it. In Brahma Samhita 5.1, Lord Brahma said, Ishwaraha Paramaha Krishnaha Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govindaha Sarva Karana Karanam. So what he says is, he is the origin of all. He has no other origin and he is the prime cause of all the causes. So whatever causes, so let the scientists say there is a singularity or steady state model, whatever they can claim. But even for the singularity, there should be some reason behind it. Here Brahma says, Sarva Karana Karanam. It means he is the cause of all other causes. There is no cause for him, but he causes all other things. Similarly, in Brahma Samhita 5.35, Ekopyasau rachayitum jagadanda kotim yachaktirasti jagadanda chayaya dhantaha andhantarasta paramanu chayantarastam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So here what he says is, he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms and is scattered throughout the universe. And he also says in his works of creation of millions and millions of worlds. So we can understand the multiple galaxies that is present within the universe or multiple solar system, whatever it is. Here the Brahma uses the word millions of worlds. So it's not like there's a creation of one world. There is a millions of creations, and who is overlooking all those? God is overlooking all those as per the instructions of Brahma. So now the first slide what we focused was the origin of universe, and we said like we actually discussed what Big Bang theory states the origin of universe to be. Now let us look into the authorized scripture of Srimad Bhagavatam. What does the Bhagavatam say about the origin of the universe? So Bhagavatam states like when God is present, he glances the unmanifested totality of all the elements called pradhana. So when the God glances the pradhana using the kala, the time, karma, and the swabhava nature, when he glances the pradhana which is in the unmanifested state, it gets manifested. So when the pradhana gets manifested, it manifests in itself as Mahat Tattva, which is prevailing in the mode of goodness. When it is prevailing in the mode of passion, then it becomes a Sutra Tattva. And then After this, it again prevails itself in the mode of ignorance that is called ahankara. So then ahankara manifests as three things: satvika ahankara, which has the jnana shakti, and the rajasika ahankara, which has kriya shakti, and then the tamasika ahankara, which has the dravya shakti. So from this satvika ahankara, we get the mind and we get the 10 sense devatas. And from the rajasika ahankara, from the kriya shakti, we get the intelligence to think. And then we have the 10 senses, the 5 working senses, karmendriyas, and 5 knowledge senses, jnanendriyas. And from tamasika ahankara, we get the panchabhutas. What are the panchabhutas? Ether, air, fire, water, earth. And then we get the panchatanmatras. What are the panchatanmatras? Sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. We get panchatanmatras and panchabhutas. With this, we get the framework for the creation of all other things. So this is called sarga, the primary creation. This is just creating all the things necessary for a residence. So that's how the primary creation is done for the universe. So basically, for the first question that we saw in the first slide, as what would be the reason for the creation of the universe? Here, the last slide says like God is actually the universe, and the process of creation is actually very beautifully explained in Bhagavatam in second canto and third canto. So now we have seen till now actually what God is and how He is a creator and maintainer. So now who is God? So there are many religions which is monotheistic, or they would call Hinduism a polytheistic religion. It means there are multiple gods. So within Hinduism there are multiple sects. So there are Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Shaktiism, and Smartism. So Shaivism says that Shivan is the supreme god. Vaishnavism says like Krishna or the Vishnu is the supreme god. Shaktiism says that Shakti is the supreme god. Whereas Smartism says like Nirguna Parabrahma. They say like all the gods are equal, similar to that, and they say like God is just a light. So they accept Vishnu, Shiva, Surya, Ganesha, and Shakti to be equal. So we have to understand why Krishna is God, and that will be continued by the next thing. Hey Krishna.
Very well done. That was a lot of information there, wasn't it?
Yeah, very nicely put, Nataji.
A lot
Oh,
of
I'm sorry,
information,
was
lot
my
of hard
video
work.
off? I thought my video was on. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a lot to take in. That was pretty well done. Okay, does now, now members of your team, does anybody have anything to add?
Now I have to add something, Mataji, to my team members. Usha Mataji, Indra Mataji, Revati Mataji, and then if Irene Mataji, Sukumar. I'm so sorry I couldn't work in the first 2 weeks. I know like it is so bad working in the last minute, and I really apologize for it. Please forgive me. From next time, I'll try start to work from the start. This time there has been a lot of things going. I couldn't focus, and I apologize for all of that. I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
So everybody forgive him?
Yeah.
So any comments?
I think he's done a really, really good job. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Now, the members of the other team, do you have any questions or comments to make, please? So that would be Uma Mataji, Sandhya Mataji, Sanchita, and Aditya Prabhu. And anybody else, if you have
Any
any
suggestions to improve? I know this can be done a lot
any
better.
questions?
So.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes, Chitra Mataji.
Yeah. Many times when you say that every creation has a creator, and so people usually ask, then who created God? That's a usual question, specifically the people who don't believe, who are atheists, or who don't believe, or even though they believe, they still have this one, because when we say that, oh, there is a creator, there is a creation, and that's why there is a creator. Then the question is, who is the creator of that creator? So how we can answer this question?
So basically, when I said in the slide, there is something called descending process to get the perfect knowledge. If we need to actually know about biology, you need to go to a microbiologist to understand what he states. So whatever a microbiologist states, that would be true. So if you want to actually know the God who is completely spiritual and not material, you have to get that source from the proper authorized people. So once you get the source from the authorized people, then you can understand that no one has created the God. Similarly, when I told about the Brahma Samhita 5.1, Lord Brahma said like Anadir Adir Govindaha. So he says like he has no other cause. So we all experience only the material world. So whatever we think, it is all subjected to what we have seen and what we have heard in this material world. But there is something above all this. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So apart from material world, there's something called the spiritual world, which is not subjected to creation and destruction. So it is always eternal. There comes the concept of eternity, where the time does not act. So there would be time, but it does not have an effect on the worlds created there. So when we take the source from the, when we get the knowledge from the bona fide source, we can understand like God doesn't have any creation. He is Anadir Adir. He is the origin of all, and he is the creation of everything.
But Prabhuji, can I ask? Sorry, Chitra Mataji. So, ask one question: how you convince an atheist that God exists? How you can convince? We have all the evidence and all the one, but he's not interested in evidence at the moment. How we could convince him that God exists?
How could you convince an atheist?
Because we have all the Newton law, we got all the scientific evidences and all that. But remember, this atheist person, I'm just saying Mr. A, Mr. John, or any Mr. whatever his name is, he doesn't really care. He's only caring about what he wants to.
Yeah, so his intention is not to really understand God. He has a preloaded conception which is trying to impose. That's it. If someone is really interested to understand, then we can have a chance to at least discuss with them. But if someone already has a concept and he's not ready to listen anything and change it, then there is no use of explaining anything. Anyway, he'll not understand it. Because even after, I'll give you an example materially. First, I said there was steady state theory, and steady state theory was ultimately disproved, and there came the Big Bang. But even then, the scientists who created the steady state theory, they said like my theory was the ultimate, so my theory cannot be disproved. So how can we say that? They couldn't accept even their own theory was flawed. So similarly, if a person has a preloaded conception, I think we can only try our best to state, like, as I said, if there is a creation, there should be a creator. Nothing can happen automatically. And even if it creates automatically, it cannot sustain so long in a perfect order. So to sustain in a perfect order, there should be a loss. And you can give this example: if there are government making the laws, is the government law just coming by itself, or is someone making it? Or the other example I gave you is like when the Urey and the Miller, when they tried making life from the chemicals, that was not a random experiment. That was a supervised experiment. They actually mixed the right chemicals at the right time, and then it was completely supervised. So they itself supervised the experiment, and how can they claim that everything happened by just by chance?
And maybe can I add on, Prabhuji, one more thing? Mataji, to Mr. John, we could say, like, about the consciousness, which Prabhuji has mentioned in one of the slide as life consciousness also. Like Mataji, Usha Mataji yesterday suggested, or we discussed, like when a child born, how the child knows about drink the milk, or when the all those things, that consciousness, we manufacture the machines, robots or everything, but we can't make the robot to cry, and then have that what do you call, compassionate hugging thing when something, if I'm injured, you can hug me and then you console me. So where from that is coming? Is anyone is creating, who we can't create, we can only cook the food whatever we get it, but that thing is not there. So I read somewhere, I think in Bhagavatam, I think in Bhagavatam, that is there is a super soul which is there. That's why in the opposite person also, in living entity, we see the super soul. That is where the connection is there, where we can linked together. So that is what we can tell to Mr. John. If Mr. John can say there is no something, he can manufacture something which can have that kind of a consciousness. That is how, maybe we can try to convince.
Wonderful point.
Thank you both, Mataji and
I
Prabhuji.
think give Mr. John Prasadam.
Mr. Yes.
That's absolutely, yeah.
Just
That's
give
it.
Mr. John Prasadam.
Hare
We are
Krishna,
Prasadam
Mataji.
devotees only. With Prasadam only we got all this.
Hare Krishna,
Okay.
Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
I would like to add something.
Yes, please.
When I was studying at the university, in one of the papers we were studying how the embryo develops into a child, or how the embryo develops. And in that one, to develop the cells or the tissues, at a particular moment, a particular signal the tissues or the cells must get a particular signal.
Yes.
And once they get the signal, then only they starts growing. And so, but the professor who was teaching us, they said that we haven't yet understood that from where this signal is coming. So why this particular cell, it starts growing from this particular moment, and then it stops growing after this many days or minutes or whatever its growth is there, and then the next starts. So he said that we haven't yet understood this process. So I think that signals it is coming from God. So yeah, this point could also be added when we are explaining the existence of the God, that these are so many, and how a big banyan tree grows from a small seed.
Yes.
Why there is a color in the flowers.
Yeah, if we actually start looking around at nature, there are innumerable examples. You just can't count the number of examples. So yes, you're right, Mataji. There's so many examples there. Anyone else?
30 minutes won't be sufficient to.
No.
Yeah,
No.
for that, there we can write, as Prabhuji has put a lot of information. Person cannot digest when we give all these examples. So one day we can show number of examples as a God exists. Yes.
Yes. I have one point to make.
Please let it be easy, Mataji.
Which was that you, towards the end of your presentation, you introduced a concept that God is spiritual. But what is spiritual and what is material, you did not cover at all. And that came out in the question when Sandhya Mataji asked the question, that got covered. So at least it got covered. And then
I actually mentioned, Mataji, I think in the slide when the people wants to
and
see
maybe
the God.
Okay. Yeah, that's where it actually came in.
No, I didn't give a detailed description.
Yeah, but then it wasn't built on. So
Yeah.
because you just made a statement saying God is spiritual, and so he cannot be seen by our material eyes. So what does spirit actually mean?
Yeah.
So that part. And then you had the origin of universe, which, had Karanodakshaya Vishnu and the whole, which is incredibly difficult even for devotees who've been reading the Bhagavatam for years to understand. So if you wanted to present that to a 19-year-old, you would have completely lost him or her. So that's just points that I wanted to make. But otherwise, I thought it was just absolutely brilliant. Yeah. And because originally I was planning to present on this topic, then I thought I'd throw it open. So to answer and plug the points that Sandhya Mataji and Chitra Mataji actually have, I'll just share what I had created, and you can tell me if this makes if this helps, and if it's different in any way. So there's a lot of overlap, of course. Of course. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
So I titled God Exists. And I thought the first thing we need to understand is the popular world views about who is God. The first is atheism. An atheist is one who says, I know there is no God. I know for a fact there is no God. An agnostic is one who says, I don't know if there is a God. A deist is one who says, yeah, God exists, but he just doesn't care. A pantheist is one who says, God is in every single thing. Every single thing is God. The tree is God, the dog is God, the cat is God, the worm is God, my hair is God, you are God, I am God. That's pantheism. Panentheism is more what we follow. God is in you. God is in me. God is in the tree. But God is not the tree. God is not me. I am not God. And then we have theism, which says God is there, and he's not just a silent observer. He actually gets in and he causes everything to happen. And if anything good happens, it's God. Anything bad happens, it's God, which means he is to be held responsible for everything. Okay. Now, given that there are so many different kinds of people, you have to pick and choose your battles. There is no point. So a deist, a pantheist, panentheist, and a theist already believe that there is a God. Right? So for them, the second part of our presentation, which is going to come later, Krishna is God, is relevant. When we talk about an agnostic and an atheist, there is the concept of no God, or is there a God? Now, when we talk about an atheist who says, I know for a fact that there is no God, there is no point even engaging with such a person. It's a waste of your time. Complete waste of your time. So the only person that we are going to be engaging with this presentation is an agnostic who is sitting there saying, I don't know. Maybe there is a God, maybe there is no God. I haven't made up my mind yet. And therefore, Stuart Chase, a philosopher, he is paraphrased here. He says, for a person who believes in God, no proof is necessary. For a person who is determined not to believe in God, no proof is sufficient. So if you pick up an atheist, just no point. So if your 19-year-old turns out to be an atheist, give him lots of halwa, lots of prasadam, and tell him, come, let's have some fun. Come to the temple when we're having a party. There'll be lots of music and dancing and good food. It's a great club. Let's go clubbing. Take him to the temple and have fun. That's all you can do with an atheist. Okay. So my arguments that God exists are only with an agnostic. My arguments with an agnostic would be like this. So the best way to actually get someone to be convinced is when they themselves answer the question. So my first question, so this is the way my argument would go. Your argument might be absolutely different. So my argument would be, okay, you want to know if God exists. Do you exist? How do you know you exist? Oh yes, I know I exist. Why? Because oh, my heart beats, my hand moves, I eat, I sleep, I do things. Okay. Now your heart beats, right? So if your heart is beating, are you always conscious? Are you always aware of your heart beating? Do you cause your heart to beat? If you don't, so for instance, so if the person says, yeah, oh yeah, you know, my heart beats because I'm alive, or because I eat and I give nutrition to my body. So then the question is, what happens when you die? So some part of you leaves you and goes, and that part is your consciousness. Now, where does this consciousness come from? So we would say that the consciousness is coming from a source. So just like, you know, if you have a small bulb in your house and it's burning, how is it burning? Because it's got some electricity. Where is that electricity coming from? It's coming from a huge powerhouse. So similarly, there is a powerhouse for your consciousness. Call them what you like. Call them super consciousness, super intelligence, the big kahuna, call them God, call them what you like. But there is the superior consciousness that exists. Oh, how do I know that? How can you say that? Well, you cannot know it. I'll tell you that up front. You're not going to be able to see him with your eyes. You're not going to be able to hear him with your ears. You're not going to be able to touch him with your hands. Your senses are useless when it comes to perceiving God. But we can look at some examples through which we may infer that God exists. And that's when I would then start, okay, and then the question could be, why can I not see God? Well, we have certain scriptures which tell us the reasons why you and I cannot see God. And that's because the Vedanta Sutra, for one, says Tarka Pratishthanat, which means Tarka means argument, logic. By no amount of logic can you prove that God exists. Because right from the beginning of philosophy, we've been trying, whether it's Western philosophy or Eastern philosophy, people have been trying to prove the existence of God through logic. And no proof has been satisfactory. But the Vedanta Sutra says it right up front. That's Tarka Pratishthanat. Cannot be. You just can't prove. And the Mundaka Upanishad says, Nayam Atma Pravachinena Labhyo, na Medhaya, na Bahuna Shrutena. Na Ayam, he, this Atma. Okay? Ayam Atma, this Atma. Na Pravachanena Labhyaha. Any amount of pravachan, any amount of lectures will not give you knowledge about him. Na medhaya, you cannot find him by your intelligence. Na bahuna shrutena, you cannot hear a lot of, or you cannot, shruti basically means scriptures. You can go through the world's scriptures, but you will not find him. How will you find him? Yam eva isha vrunute tena labhyah tasya isha atma vivarnute tanum swam. He has to choose to show himself to you. And that's the only way you will be able to see him. Oh, if that's the case, how can we know that there is God? So let's first look at the Western arguments for the existence of God. And the reason I have picked up Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways is because his arguments actually fit in very neatly with our Brahma Samhita. Okay, so Thomas Aquinas has 5 arguments for the existence of God. The first, he says, is there must be an unmoved mover. We see that everything in the universe is in motion. If everything is in motion, that means somebody must have set everything in motion. And that person must be a steady mover, an unmoved mover. Second, Thomas Aquinas says there must be a first cause. So the unmoved mover is Anadi. First cause, Adi. Anadir Adir Govindaha. Third, he says he must be necessarily a being. He must be a necessary being. Necessary being means at no time does he not exist. Why? Because everything that we see around us has the possibility to not exist. Meaning what? Everything around us has the possibility to die. Everything in the material world has the possibility to die. So, which means there is possibly a time when nothing existed. And if nothing existed and something had to come into existence, which means there must have been some one necessary existence from which all the others could come into being. Sarva Karana Karanam. Then he says argument from degree. He says, we say things here are good. But good in relationship to what? Which means there has to be a maximum. So that being who has maximum goodness, who causes all the goodness, is God. Ishwar. And then there is the teleological argument. Things without intelligence are ordered towards a purpose. Unintelligent objects cannot be ordered unless they are done so by an intelligent being. What does this mean? This is where all your solar system and all your Newton's laws and your Fibonacci series, everything. There are so many, if you look at science, there are so many constants. Planck's constant, this constant, that the pi appears in almost in so many calculations. You cannot think of anything circular without a pi. And these numbers, they are constant. Now, if they are constant, they cannot. So the argument here is, unless they were created by an intelligent being, there is no way this kind of intelligent order is possible. So this is Thomas Aquinas's arguments for God. And then we come to arguments by Srila Prabhupada for God from Life Comes from Life. And if you read the book, it's just one whole argument for why God exists. And I've just put down 7 points from there. So that the ingredients, everything is made up of ingredients from nature. And the source cannot be nothing. He argues that the source must be a person. The Pancha Mahabhutas, the 5 elements, earth, air, water, fire, and ether, they exist in everything, even in an atom. How is there such consistency? the 4 principles of life, ahara, nidra, bhaya, maithunam, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. It is there in every animal and human being and in every atom. Because every atom is trying to split, is trying to, there is energy within it. Yeah, it's trying to absorb that energy, it's trying to break it up, it's protecting itself. Every living entity has intelligence. Even a plant knows that it has to grow around an obstacle. And then he says, Darwin's natural selection implies that there is a choice, but who is making that choice? Soul and consciousness, material elements are not creative, only the soul is creative. Yes, put a dead body there and tell it, now get up and start building creating a painting or, nothing's going to happen. Why? Because the soul is not there. And the soul cannot be seen. And I love this. Neither can poison, only the effects can be felt. So don't tell me you want to see the soul. You cannot see it, but its effect can be felt. So if you haven't already read the book, it's a small book. Just read this. It's just brilliant. Life comes from life. And then there are other arguments. Reincarnation, for one. Now scientists are studying a number of cases of reincarnation, and they are able to prove that people have been born again. There are a number of scientists who are not willing to accept it, but there are a number of them who are now beginning to at least sit on the fence about it. And there are even more who are saying, oh yeah, nah, there's just too much proof for us to say this does not happen. They will not say, yes, we believe it 100%. They'll say, oh, more studies are required, more this is required, more refutation is required, more, other scientists need to get involved and so on. But whatever it is. And then one argument is that the scriptures talk about the Lord, about the existence of God. Now, how do we actually believe the scriptures? Especially when it says something like, oh, the whole universe is situated in an upside down triangle on an upside down mountain, Mount Meru. So we have models now being created by scientists which show that the accelerating universe, so there is a decelerating universe, which is not possible, which means we are all going to collapse into ourselves. A coasting universe, which means it's not growing at all, but scientists have seen that the universe is actually growing. And that means it's an accelerating universe and it is a perfect Mount Meru. And if our scriptures are able to describe it, it means that somebody has seen this. Somebody has seen this model. Somebody has perceived this model. Now, how can somebody perceive this model? How does that even work? So that works because, when we look at Nyaya Shastras, okay? Nyaya Shastras actually say that various yogis will be able to perceive. So yogi will be able to perceive the universe. Okay, a yogi is able to perceive the universe. Why? Because he is able to control the Surya Nadi. Okay, If that is the case, then depending on how much you are able to control your nadi versus how much I am able to control my nadi, your consciousness versus my consciousness, your degree of yogic experience versus my degree of yogic experience, your perception of the universe is going to be slightly different from my perception of the universe. So if you actually see Bhanu Maharaj's presentation on Power of the Mind, he talks about this, about how the yogi is able to view the universe from a different perspective altogether. So we are sitting within the universe and looking out. The yogi may be physically seated here, but his perception is from outside the universe, and he's looking at the universe and going, ah, that's an upside down triangle. It's Mount Meru. And then there are more scientific arguments, you know, everything is orderly, reliable. The human brain, for instance, the human brain is amazing. It's unbelievable. Scientists haven't been able to even understand 3, 4, 5% of this brain. And already there are volumes and volumes, creeds of work about the brain. We talk about the Big Bang theory, what caused the Big Bang, etc., which you people already covered. Now, the expansion of the universe is at a precise speed. Anything more, problem. Anything less, problem. The Earth is perfect in its size, its location, its axis. Anything more, problem. Anything less, problem. The nuclear forces that exist within an atom are so perfectly balanced. Any change, nuclear reaction, all of us would be blowing up. Electromagnetism versus gravity. There is actually precise so for instance, the strength of gravity is supposed to be, it's 10 to the power 40 times weaker than the electromagnetism force that holds atoms together. Even the slightest change in this proportion would prevent the formation of stars. So everything is just so precise, calculated down to the last minutest degree. So, to summarize, the Shastras, there is a saying, "Phalena parichiyate," means the results, the efficacy of something can be only known through the results, can be only understood through the results. So, or like, you know, we would say the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So my argument to the little agnostic person would be to say, so now here you have a choice. Not everything that is not perceivable physically is false. So for instance, within mathematics, you have imaginary numbers. They are imaginary numbers, but they work. Why would you believe that? Right? So you believe certain scientists. You believe them because they are experts. So here too, there are experts. If you wish, you could talk to them. Now, how do we know that they are experts? Because some things you just have to try out. the result is not always visible to you. So unless you actually pick up a dumbbell and try building your muscle, and you've never tried doing that, and you keep saying, nah, these things don't work. Have you even tried it? So give it a try. And yes, results will vary. Because given your body versus my body, maybe you'll build up your muscle much faster than me. So results will vary. And here the results will vary based on your consciousness, based on your habits, based on all the other things. But give it a try. And so once again, if you believe in God, there's no proof required. But if you don't believe in God, there's no way I'm going to be able to convince you. And that's why we say Adau Shraddha. Just, do you believe when your teacher says that this place called Timbuktu exists? If you do, yeah, then this is it. Just believe me when I say God exists. I won't promise to show him to you, but I promise to show you the path by which you can walk that path and you can see him for yourself, if you're willing to give it a try. And that's where I would stop. So does that answer some of the questions?
Yes.
Done.
Yes, Mataji.
That was something which no one can even conceive it. It's like we need to sit properly and study line by line here.
Sorry, which one are you saying?
No, generally I'm saying the information that you gave, it was so perfect. We need.
Oh, no.
It was so systematic and so nice, Mataji. It's really
Very nice.
brilliant. That is like,
it's just that I literally imagined a 19-year-old who I was talking to. So does that help answer your questions, Chitra Mataji?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can also say that as there are something fundamental truth in science, because those people, they believe in science.
Yes.
So like that, just a fundamental truth in science. So this is a fundamental principle, or the first principle,
Yes.
that God is not created, he exists. So that's a fundamental principle.
Yes, otherwise you wouldn't call him God.
Yeah.
Mm.
And if anyone is being particularly challenging, that show me the God, or I won't believe, just say that, oh, I can't see USA, so I don't think USA exists.
Yeah, exactly. Do you believe Timbuktu exists?
Yeah.
Have you seen?
I can't see air, so air doesn't exist.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's only for the people who are really becoming very challenging, or being stubborn, or
yeah.
But
And usually in that case, Mataji, it just
say Hare Krishna.
Just say, yeah, oh,
Yeah.
you just be happy. Like I said, come, you just come. I'll give you lots of halwa. Come.
I'm feeling hungry now, Taji.
I know.
So
we
one
can't
question,
see him, but we can always feel him every moment of life.
Yes.
That's the feeling, that innate feeling itself is God.
Yes.
Yes.
But like I said, that works when you talk to someone who believes in God.
Yeah.
You know, but when someone is not quite sure, they can come up with arguments saying, oh, but that could just be a coincidence, or this happened, but then this bad thing also happened to me, which is why the first thing I started off with was talking about consciousness and the soul. Because when you look at the Bhagavad Gita, what is the first thing Krishna is doing? He's not talking about bhakti. He's not talking about God. He brings it down. You have to first get out of material and into spiritual. Because that is where the concept of God even starts. Even the tiniest particle of understanding of God is spiritual. In a material mindset, it's just not going to happen. And so Krishna brings Arjuna. The first thing he says is, you're not the body, you're the soul. And then he describes the soul in so much detail. So the first thing, if you want to convince someone about, so it's like this, na? If you want to tell someone, oh, prasadam is really good, you give them a bit of prasadam to taste. The same way, if you want to tell them, oh, God exists, you have to show them spirit first. They have to experience spirit first. Then they can experience the ultimate spirit. Okay. So if you want, I'll send out this presentation to you all. I don't know. So
Points, Mataji, I'm so sorry.
yeah.
So since like you mentioned about accelerating and decelerating, so that's what today morning I was studying latest news. There has been some theories that has been proposed, which is going to disprove Big Bang theory. So next set of theories is going to come very soon. So if someone says I will believe only in science, yeah, we can believe in science. We should believe in science up to some extent. But when science itself keeps changing something, that's the question of believing it. Because today I read regarding that accelerating and decelerating. So now what they have proposed it for the next 65 million years, the universe is going to be accelerating, and the rest 35 million years, so totally to make 100 million years. At the end of 100 million, it will be a complete decelerating, and then like how Big Bang happened, there is going to be something called Big Crunch. So with that, the universe will be completely gone. So accelerating for 65 million and decelerating. So after some time, they'll again say like
at least as long as it's accelerating for 65 million years, I'm happy.
Yeah. And then when you spoke about the perception of the universe, Yogi, so that one point can be used even when people ask like, why does your Bhagavatam say like Earth is flat when Earth is actually globe? So 2 point what we can use.
No, it doesn't say Earth is flat, huh?
No, that's what I mean. So we are speaking about Bhumandala and Bhugola.
That is right.
So that's what I was about to say. So like when we say about Earth, even in one of the Bhagavatam cover picture, Prabhupada would have the Varahadev lifting the earth. I don't know if it's in Bhagavatam or somewhere. So it clearly states it is Bhugola. So of the Varsha we are living, it is Gola. But when someone asks why does the earth stays without studying, like why is the earth flat? Then His Holiness Bhanuswami Maharaj, I think he has given the same explanation. There are two kinds of perception. One is like viewing the world from left brain and like viewing the world from the right brain. We just, I'm not so sure is it left or right, but we common people, they just view the world using the right brain or something. But yogis, even if they're staying here, as you said, they view the world completely different from us. Like when they see the world, it will be not like how we are seeing and perceiving the world. They will be looking from the left point of view. That's the reason they have clearly mentioned all the 7 dvipas and how Bhumandala is actually placed. So that I thought of adding the point.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so we'll stop here for today. Thank you so very much. And so tomorrow we are not going to be doing the second presentation. So who is supposed to be doing 7.5? Was it Parthasarathi Prabhu? No? Okay. Okay. Anyway, I'll let you know tomorrow morning if we'll have class tomorrow evening. The reason is I have some guests also coming over. So is it all right if I let you know tomorrow morning?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji, no problem.
No worries.
Okay.
Problem.
And the
Thank you
following
so
weekend's a long weekend, Mataji. No class, please.
Oh, yes, next weekend's a long weekend. That's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
so many birthdays coming along. The one in the red dress there, her birthday coming along.
Oh, is that right, Usha Mataji? Okay.
Husband's birthday, so I think it's going to be.
Yeah, the Queen's birthday.
That's my husband's birthday. So I think, yeah, it's all a long weekend. Let's not have the class, Mataji. And we got to prepare the group 2
Yeah,
when
no worries.
Sarthi is a bit better.
Yeah,
when
yeah.
he's when we have to have another discussion.
No worries, no worries. So yeah, in which case, let's do one thing. Let's today is Saturday. Anyways, tomorrow I don't think it's going to be possible. So let's just meet on the 11th of June straight. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll meet on the 11th of June next.
Nirjal Ekadashi.
Nirjala Ekadashi, yes. What a wonderful day to present Krishna as Bhagavan.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
So much.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks a lot, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. No problem, Mataji.